Dr. Halland here. Very nice to have you all here. Some colleagues as well who I've invited. It's a pretty broad topic to cover longevity, so I really wanted to make it very practical and applicable for everyone, especially because we are at a psychedelic conference. So I wanted to add a few of that mindset stuff into here. So the title of my talk, Are You Dying Faster or Living Longer? And that really is a large part about what is longevity medicine. So I wanted to break it down into two steps. What is the why and what is the how in your longevity program? So first off, what is aging? We really don't think about aging as a disease, but it is, right? You have cognitive decline, you have musculoskeletal issues, immune function starts going down, sexual issues, aesthetics. And so the reality is, a term that's come up a lot is health span versus lifespan. And so what this really gets down to is lifespan is what we know about. And so a lot of people think longevity is about just living longer. I actually kind of also agree with most people on the side of health span. It's how many years do you spend your life actually living healthy? So you have a higher quality number of years. And we'll kind of dive deeper into this. And so this is a lot for a slide, but the reality is it's really about quality over quantity. So health span is really about what is the quality in your life. So if you live to be 100, but the last 20 years of your life are basically debilitated, hospitalized, chronic medical conditions, that's not really a high quality of life. Versus if you live to 100 and you're 99 and it's been high quality years, the decline is really more that last year. And that's kind of where you get a lot of the quality over quantity. Health and well-being, obviously, in general, we think about the topic of wellness. And in medicine, many things are actually very isolated in silos. And so if you have diabetes, you get your endocrinologist will see you. If you have something wrong with your health in terms of your mental health or let's say the dementia, there's not a lot of crosstalk. And so what we're seeing now is the integration of health units, and that's where the whole realm of functional medicine came into play. And so obviously with longevity and anti-aging, that is a bit of the integration. We have a lot of topics to cover. I have like 70 slides. I know we're not going to get to all of them. So, so here's kind of like the basics of what I wanted to structure for you guys. Longevity medicine, the ABCs of longevity, it really comes down to 5 keys. We have a formula for it. I'm going to spend quite a bit of time more on the longevity mindset. I call this the 5 H's. We have your biological age versus chronological age. We have a panel of that coming up afterwards. And then the cornerstones and actions, focus treatments, and we have some bonus content. So step 1, why? What is your healthcare journey? And really it's about having practical, effective programs. Because if it's not practical and it's not effective, people won't do it. And if you don't give people structure, they're also not going to do it. We have many patients who basically come see us, but if it's too hard or you're not coaching them through it, the barrier to entry becomes too high. I think that's actually why a lot of people actually have chronic medical disease anyways, because there's a lack of understanding. And so you may think or know what's going on with some of your labs, but if you're not given a practical solution, you're not going to do it. That's been pretty common. You'll see little QR codes, so guys, that's pretty, if you don't know how it works, you just open up your iPhone, hit on the camera. I have bonus content that outlinks here, so there's things that you can subscribe to. I'm going to talk about things that maybe I can't have time for the slides, but how did we get here? So my background is in PM&R, and then I did a fellowship in interventional spine, so very interventional stuff, so I have 2 board certifications. And what I learned about the healthcare system, it's pretty complex and broken. When you try to navigate this system, even amongst either colleagues and physicians, it's pretty hard to actually know what to do, where to go, and even if you know what to do, where to go, how do you make it happen in your life? The second aspect of how we got here is things are rapidly evolving in therapeutics. So for example, my world is a lot of pain management. In the pain management world, I've been able to add regenerative medicine. And so a little bit of a story share. I did a fellowship program in New York City, and we're highly interventional. And so most of the program was basically giving people lots of opiates, 200 pills of opiates and morphine that just really didn't philosophically align with me. So I kind of really realized pretty early on that some of the medicine that we were practicing was more just treating the symptoms. You have pain, we're going to mask it with an opiate. But actually, what about treating the problem? What could we do to actually fix the underlying problem that's causing that low back pain or causing some nerve pain? And so that's where I really dive deep into the regenerative medicine side of things, which then led to functional medicine. That then leads to another problem with insurance limitations. Longevity really is accumulation of people taking care of their own health, and now practitioners helping guide people essentially on the scope of what insurance doesn't let you cover. And just on a simple note, we did a lot of knee pain candidates, but the problem was if the insurance company says, the best way to treat that knee pain is a knee replacement, and you're kind of like, that seems pretty aggressive. That's the answer, but the reality is, reality in the real world and in clinical medicine, and then what you're actually allowed to do in the scope of medicine from an insurance standpoint, really actually can cause quite a bit of problems for ultimately for the patient. Mainstream testing versus new testing, we'll get into a little bit of that, and obviously big corporations, you guys can guess what that might mean. Some people may not want you healthy. Click on the QR code to find out why. Step 2, why are we here and how do we do it? It's really the ABCs of longevity. A stands for actions, B is your body system, C are the cornerstones. So really actions over medications. We're a very pharmaceutical-driven industry in terms of medical care. Some of it's absolutely necessary. But in terms of the general population, the idea is to have this wellness perspective, right? Rather than the sick care model. And body symptoms over symptom treatments. You can actually cluster certain aspects of body systems together that complement each other. And we'll get into that because that really goes into the cornerstones about disease management. So it's a bit of a different paradigm in how we traditionally manage disease. And I'll give some examples. It really comes down to this model that I figured out. Pretty much this took me about 10 years to bring it down from what I've seen overall clinical practice. And clients basically now join us on a year-long journey. And it comes down to inflammation, detox, your immune system, and stress. And they all interrelate. So for example, if you have problems with inflammation, your body has issues with detoxing, and inflammation worsens the stress in your body. Vice versa, your immune system. So they're interrelated. And so what happens in medical right now, we don't get the integrated training. And so the integrated training is what's missing in a lot of this longevity medicine field. And so I like to call this the ascension model. It's a pyramid. So not only is it a cornerstone, you deal with inflammation, you detox your body, which is a combination of heavy metals, environmental exposures. Without getting down to the COVID track, you could have long hauler COVID. Your body needs to detoxify certain things that happen from an immune perspective, autoimmune perspective. Your immune system then relates to it. Obviously, stress is not just mental stress. It actually affects your neuroendocrine system. So we're talking mind-hormone connection. And at the top of the ascension model is mindset. And we'll get into that. So the formula is this. A formula makes it repeatable. So in healthcare, some of it is a lot of, I wouldn't say guesswork, it's kind of trial and error. We're trying to figure out what's going on. But if you make a formula repeatable, it really gives, it's not really what you do, it's how you do it. So the formula is you got to take action on the body systems, so know which systems work, and you're going to divide that into the cornerstones, which is basically these 4 things. And that's why I wanted to simplify it, because what's different? It's the fundamental approach. And for a lot of how we practice like healthcare, the answers are always in the questions. So if you don't know what questions to answer, you're not going to answer, or you don't know what questions to ask, you're not going to get the right answers. If your question is, how do I lower this guy's blood glucose, but the reality is he has an eating disorder or he has a microbiome disruption, you'll never fix it, and it just becomes chronic. So again, here's the longevity formula that I've been working on. Essentially, I wanted to share some examples. A lot of people, what we see is when you're dealing with sleep issues, first answer from your doctor, benzos, sleeping pills. That's not the answer. They probably actually need to have more sleep hygienes, routines, and things like that. Or it could be something else in terms of like endocrine disruption. Body systems, again, we're really not looking for Band-Aid solutions anymore. You don't want to just treat the system, the symptom, you want to treat the system. So systems over symptoms. And so, for example, if someone has bloating, the common thing is to take antacids or things for your stomach, but the reality is it's your microbiome, right? All the things in your gut, all the bacteria, these are what's causing the bloating. The bloating is just, again, a first-order manifestation. You really just want to see what's actually causing the root cause of the problem. And again, back to the cornerstones, once you start understanding how everything interrelates, let's take weight loss. Weight loss is, of course, diet and exercise, but back to the fundamentals of how cornerstones work, you've got to manage the inflammation. So it's a combination of stress, which is cortisol, and inflammation, which is mostly your gut. So that's kind of why I say you can do certain things in healthcare, which are great, but when you kind of go into what we call the world of functional medicine and longevity medicine, it really breaks down into these type of things. So we're here at a psychedelic conference / longevity and mental health. I felt it was appropriate to talk, what is the longevity mindset? So briefly, mindset's really just establishment of attitudes, beliefs, and, how do you view things, right? But again, answers are in the questions. A lot of people will say, well, my mindset is to be positive, but being positive doesn't fix the problem. So it actually kind of relates to this. Has anyone heard of Ikigai before? Do we all know what this is? Okay, great. So Ikigai is a concept of basically, it's a Japanese concept that it gives a person a sense of purpose and reason for being or living. So at the middle of it, we have 4 things that are really important. It's what you're good at, what you love, what the world needs, and what you get paid for. So what happens when you're out of balance, right? So if you take this concept of Ikigai, if you love something, you're good at it, the world needs it, but you don't get paid for it, that's basically you're broke, right? But you love being broke. Or the other aspect of, let's say this is actually probably a lot of people, well, some people I run into who work with us, they get paid for a lot of money, the world needs it, they're good at it, but they don't love it, right? So you're really comfortable, but you have this feeling of emptiness. Your health mindset works a lot the same way, and so this is what this looks like. So here's your Ikigai for your longevity mindset. Your ultimate goal is to create this home, your emotional home, mental home, spiritual home, and relationships. I'll get into that because there's a lot of research on that. There are 4 horsemen that make you unhappy, basically, and you have your A team. And that's basically attention, action, aspirations, and alignment. So we'll dive deep into this. So here's what it looks like. As applied as a whole, we actually have a whole formula on how to get people into this longevity mindset. I'll talk about the 4 horsemen because this is basically what disrupts your level of happiness and from actually taking action and doing things. So the 4 horsemen of your mindset are basically chaos, imbalance, disconnected, and uncertainty. And these came about because if you have or are missing one of these areas, you have to find out what the root cause of this is, right? And so we have to give it a label, right? Because if you actually give something a label, you can actually address it. So I always say, what's your horseman? For me, my horseman's pretty easy. It's really imbalance, which is basically, I have no hobbies, guys. All I do is work, and I'm on conferences, and I travel a lot. But at least I know it, but I like this. But it's not a real hobby, right? Working's not a hobby. I need to play the piano and go dancing and do all the other fun things that I like to do. But that's why you have the A team. A team is basically the overlap between all these things, and I'll kind of dive into it, what it means. But you have attention, action, aspirations, and alignment. So that is basically how we focus on it. So when you actually break down, how do you understand your mindset? Everyone has something that they're most likely missing, right? So what are habits? Your habits are your routines, your actions, discipline, focus, things we do or avoid doing, and things that revolve around time management. So that's your habit. Hopes are your beliefs in yourself. Self-talk, things we tell ourselves, whether true or untrue. Many of us tell things ourselves that are not true. The language you use with yourself, the language you use just to describe things, all these affect your mindset and goal setting. And so the commonality between having hope and habit is attention. The saying is, where your attention goes is where your energy flows. So if you lack attention, it pretty much affects areas of your hope and your habits. Back to here, hobby. Essentially, hobbies are your passion, your joys, things that bring you balance, things to take time for yourself, cultivating things. And if you're missing things on the hobby side, but also habit side, that revolves around action. So the idea of this is that it's going to give you things that you can say, hey, if I'm a deficient in this area, what steps do I need to do next? In terms of harmony, this is pretty much, I think, a core focus in this type of platform. Harmony is essentially mindfulness, gratitude, meditation, reflection, journaling, spending time to be grounded, and that's all about alignment. And I very commonly see people who have difficulty with getting into this longevity mindset. There's a little bit of a misalignment. There's a misalignment of not being grounded, being too busy. They don't take time for themselves. So that alignment's very important. And last but not least is hope. So hope is really belief in ourselves, the self-talk, etc. So I kind of already brought that up as well. And that's all revolve around aspirations. So your aspirations connect your hope and your harmony together. And so back to sort of the obvious example, but it's not obvious. When you're deficient in any one of these, this is why I call it the 4 horsemen. If you are basically hopeful, you have harmony, you have hobbies, but you really have no structure around it, that's chaos. That's why you have chaos in your life, is because you just didn't create routine and structure. And that happens. There's many people who are they're just great at being creative, and they have a lot of hobbies, and they're really positive thinkers, and they meditate all the time, but their lives are not going forward. That would be a structure chaos issue. Imbalance, this is basically my four horsemen, very hopeful, great structure and habits, work-wise, harmony, I'm always journaling, but there's not enough time on my end where I don't make enough time, so I really need to get more imbalance with my hobby horsemen. Disconnected, I see a lot of this more recently, especially in younger people. You're just so busy with life, right? You may have great habits and structure, you take plenty of time, you're traveling and enjoying your best life, you're very hopeful, but you're not very grounded. I think that's actually, at a conference like this, I think one of the benefits, or what we see, because I've been asked this a lot, what is the connection between psychedelics and longevity? I think it's about harmony. I think psychedelics brings people into that inner space where they can connect with themselves more, they get that deeper insight, and they're now, more grounded. And so some people have described it, you can do years of therapy in just a matter of weeks. That's what I think is happening in the longevity world and psychedelic world. It's creating more harmony, connecting ourselves, removing that horseman. And the last one is uncertainty. It's basically, if you don't have hope in your life, that's going to create a lot of uncertainty, whether you feel you actually even deserve health, or whether you can do health. So that's a huge part of what I say contributes to what we call your home. So that's really, when I talk about the longevity mindset, it's like, how do you create that home? It's an emotional home, it's a mental home, spiritual home, relationships. And really all of this is about yourself, right? Because the better that you take care of yourself, you can show up for others. And so this is actually very interesting. When they did an 85-year Harvard study, so like 8 decades they followed people around, and the number one thing that they found that makes us happy, positive relationships. So if you think about that, it's positive relationship with others, but more importantly, what's that positive relationship you have with yourself? Because if you become that person that other people want to be around, you'll attract those type of people. So this is kind of what I say. It's often hard to find this mindset framework, so this is stuff that we'll do more of a master class on. This is something we normally coach our clients with for over the course of a year. Anybody here, if you sign up for it, I'll know because it's time marked. We will go ahead and give that small group form for you. So I'll create a little special small group masterclass. You guys can join if you sign up before you leave at the end of today. You're all invited. I'll show that at the end again. I'll show that. Okay, there you go. But yeah, it'll be a small cohort. But the fun part is that we'll kind of teach a lot of these things because we're going to release this later on. Right now, it's more private. It's one-on-one, basically coaching. And so a lot of our people, they'll do like a 3-month or 6-month program. But for you guys, we'll do it as a group Zoom class. Everyone gets to learn all the bits and pieces before I have a book that's coming out. So you get a little sneak peek. So biological age versus chronological age. What does this revolve around? This is basically about epigenetics. We have a great special talk after this on the epigenetics of things. Epigenetics is basically the study of how our behaviors and environment can cause changes on our genes. So how does your external world affect your internal world affect your internal world, right? And so this is all about turning on DNA or turning off DNA. And so I love this statement, you can't manage what you can't measure. It's impossible, guys. That's why functional medicine, the big key in functional medicine is really doing these tests that your normal, let's say, primary care doctor just doesn't have access to, or the insurance companies won't cover it, but you can't ignore it. Now that we have new ways to test, it's not like it doesn't exist just because no one's ordering it. So you really have to actually take that into mind. And so this is a graph of basically showing what goes on chronological age versus your biological age. Essentially what happens is epigenetic age is a big risk factor for chronic disease and death. You also can correlate it to actually health, muscle mass, IQ. And so you can actually age faster. I'm sure we've seen our friends who look a lot older than they are, or you could age slower, and that would be the opposite. So knowing this and actually being able to take action on it are very key things on how do you reduce your biological age. And so without kind of going too deep into it, because we actually have a panel covering it, how do you measure cellular age? It's about methylation. And so methylation is the epigenetic modification of your DNA. So your DNA doesn't change, it's what parts of your DNA get turned on, what parts of your DNA get turned off. And it's that process that actually causes aging patterns. But likewise, the cool part is that if you can measure it, you can then manage it, right? And so there's a whole bunch of things on epigenetic clocks. There's actually a pretty cool website that has a contest where who's aging faster and who's aging slower. But the long story short is that once you actually understand that aging is a disease, you'd want to actually measure it and then figure out how ways to manage it. And the cool part is that you can actually modify these things in as little as 4 months. So if you realize you're aging faster because you have a certain lifestyle change, like let's say you're always going to bed late, but your clock is internally built to go to bed early, you can change that, and that will reflect actually on the test versus other testing, which is made, when you go to a doctor's office, cholesterol, CBCs, et cetera, it's not going to tell you how healthy your body's aging. So it's going to maybe lead you in that direction, but we're now very specific in how we can actually measure our aging. This is my biological clock. I'm a little older than 41 now, for the record, but I'm internally 29. Maybe I'm younger than 29 because I think I'm doing pretty good. So I'm internally 29. It's probably a little bit better because I do take care of myself minus all the flying. But now that, and this is kind of crazy too, the World Health Organization only as of last year says, guess what guys, aging is a disease. Okay, I mean, we kind of knew that. But if you think about it, in as little as 6 years, all the baby boomers are going to be over 65. That's pretty profound. And so when you think about it, 1 in every 5 Americans is basically over 65. And they never had a lot of access to this technology. So what are we going to do? Are they going to have more lifespan, or are they going to have more health span? And then by 2050, essentially the world's population is half of it, or not half, it will double. 2 billion people that are 60 years old. That's a lot of people. And that's a lot of chronic disease if it's not being managed. So again, back to the ABCs of longevity, there's a lot of things that are very similar that's being said in this space, whether you call it biohacking, peak performance, functional medicine, anti-aging. I think it's very important to actually look at things and consider it as a whole, because how you approach it really changes your outcome. And it's really the isolation of the diseases and not actually treating it as a system, which I think is causing the problem. There are 9 hallmarks of what we describe causes aging. We won't have enough time to go through it all, but this is a pretty common one to actually check out. It basically comes down to your genes, your DNA, telomeres, which we've probably heard a lot about, which is the end caps of your DNA, mitochondria. That's a large part of my area of research. I do a lot of mitochondria research that basically powers all your cells. Intracellular communication, stem cells, that's another area. I've been doing regenerative medicine to help people with low back pain, knee pain, hip pain, essentially help people avoid knee replacements and major surgery. We have cell turnover and recycling. That's basically senescent cells. Those are zombie cells in your body. And nutrient sensing, and last but not least, protein folding and formation. So essentially, how does your body regulate itself? So when you think about how drugs work, drugs kind of work on some of these levels, but they don't work on all of these levels. And so the key is how many times can you hit one of these 9 hallmarks of aging? That really creates that whole ecosystem and system of how your body can repair itself. So this is basically the summary, guys. It's for these 4 things. It's inflammation, detox, immune, and stress. And if I were to really double down on things to focus on, inflammation is mostly in your gut, right? I mean, it's obviously other places in your body too, but most of our gut has very disrupted microbiomes because the food quality is not as good. The nutrients in your soil suck. You may be eating an apple, but it doesn't really have all those apple properties anymore. Your tissues, if you don't think you need to detox, I pretty much guarantee that 9 out of 10 people here need some form of detox, and I'll show you my report to show why. Your immune system, anything post-COVID world, everyone's immune system is definitely compromised for many reasons. Stress, that really comes down to the nervous system, but nervous system and hormones, we see a very much like across the board, male testosterone levels are going down. There's a lot of endocrine disruption for females. So stress, I blanket it more into nervous system and hormones. And then of course the mindset, that's all about your brain. Your brain health really is actually also what you're thinking. This is actually one of my heavy metal reports. So I pretty much had inflammation. It was a combination of the food I was eating, and also detoxification. So even though I'm eating organic, I think I'm eating healthy, my arsenic levels are through the roof, and my mercury just went off the chart. And I did a 4-month program. A lot of people know about chelation, but this was more of a gentle program. We used different supplements to basically help get the heavy metals out of my body. And I'll tell you, I'm usually very happy, have high energy. After 4 months, I even had more. So then I realized, wow. So I'm on a detox again, because basically what I think now that's happening in medicine is not even about I need to be healthy. I need to undo what's happening to me every day, which is things in your water, things in your food, highly processed foods, even stuff again, they have plant-based meat alternatives. It's highly processed. So even though it may not be meat-based, the fact that things are highly processed, you're not necessarily getting all the nutrients you need from it. And then your body doesn't recognize this foreign thing called fake meat. So again, I'm not against it. It's just more so whatever happens in your body, you have to measure it, because I didn't think I had high arsenic levels. That, like, where would I get that from? Who's putting that in my water? It's from plants. It comes from basically, the arsenic is in the soil now, so everything that's grown from it is absorbing it. So you can't control how your farmer grows your vegetables. So that's why this counts. We got some focus treatments. I've got about 2 minutes left, so won't cover all of it. I'm going to blast through some slides. My favorite things that I like to talk about, again, if you hit the QR code, we'll get into it. I love stem cells. I love exosomes. NAD is your body's source of energy, and senescent cells. That's a very big thing of hallmark of aging. I'll briefly talk about exosomes because I think this is the newest thing in the biotech world. Exosomes are basically how your cells communicate to each other. They are these little FedEx packages that trigger your body to make more stem cells or to heal. Without getting into it, there's a lot of things that they do. They pretty much regulate everything in your body, right? From repair, your immune response, initiate blood cell formation, and then you have treatment. I think the best way to describe how powerful exosomes are, I have a client, he was going on full-on liver failure. It was basically due to alcoholism. Non-transplant candidate. They're not going to transplant somebody who drinks. Their assumption is you will drink away the new one. We did a 6-month treatment. We did about 500 billion units of stem cell. The liver regenerated. So pretty much there's so much technology there now that you don't know about because no one really publishes these studies because well, anyways, click on the QR code. NAD and biohacking. So your body needs energy, right? So what is NAD? I think this is a pretty common thing that a lot of people have heard about. How many people have heard about NAD? Is it okay, wow, that's great. This was not popular 5 years ago. This was like, I was like a guy talking about this and they're like, oh, isn't that for detox? I mean, it is. NAD basically is what every cell in your body uses to produce ATP. So when you really think about how profound that is, it's everything that your body does. Cell signaling, cell division, mitochondrial function, DNA, epigenetics, we talked about that, inflammation, and circadian rhythm. Pretty much here are all the pathways. So it's not an unproven science. It's super real now. I think where the debate in NAD comes from is the source of NAD. A rough idea of why we age also, every 20 years you get about half. So even when you're 20 years old, your NAD is only 50%. When you're 40, it's 25%. When you're 60, it's 12. So that kind of makes sense, right? A lot of this chronic disease popping up when you're about 60 years old. You got 10% of the energy in your body to do all the repair needs it does, right? Let alone all the bad things that are happening. But to let you know, in the beginning, NAD was actually used for alcohol detox, opiate dependence, a little bit of some early work in neurodegenerative diseases. But now a lot of it's being applied for longevity and anti-aging. That's actually how I got into it. I was using this for regenerative medicine to actually help the stem cells in your body basically be stronger. You'll hear a lot about NAD. There's IV formulations versus oral. That will be a whole other talk. I'm more than happy if you sign up for one of our newsletters. We'll get into it. That's a big area of my research. I would say one is like horsepower, one's like gasoline. Your car works well with both. You have more horsepower, it goes faster. If you have more gasoline, you can go longer. That's kind of how I would describe the IV world and oral world. Tons of studies in how NAD is super beneficial. Harvard's in it, MIT, all the supplement stuff. It gets a little confusing. There's so much in the supplement world. So I think that kind of will offline as well. I think everyone should be on some version of a precursor, which is typically NMN or NR. There are ways to actually increase NAD production also by enzymatic activation and also diet and exercise, of course. Cell senescence, this is a pretty hot topic as well. These are what we call zombie cells. You have cells in your body that basically, once they stop functioning, they have that slow decline. But instead of like just going out and exiting gracefully, they basically hang around and they're squatting in your body. So so essentially, they basically cause havoc, a lot of inflammation. They actually promote problems and aging in your body. So, you know, we'll do, since we talked about NAD and we don't have a lot to chat about it, QR code time. We'll give away a few bottles of NAD to a few people here who sign up. So by all means, enjoy. And back to the cornerstones. I ran out of time, but this is what I would say the summary of my talk is. It's this cornerstone model with ascension to mindset and basically the longevity mindset. That's the framework. And that's the masterclass. Again, my gift to you. I love doing things to share and educate. So whenever you want, just sign up before the end of the day. And our longevity community. So we'll keep you posted on all the stuff that's new and anything that we're involved in from a research perspective. And if you stick around, we have our longevity our panel on epigenetics and the testing involved. All right, thanks so much, guys. Appreciate it.